Um, what I would like to do today is the following. I could have spoken, by the way, about Thanksgiving. It's interesting. There is, I don't know if you know that, but I sent it actually to Robert Bergman. The Spanish and Portuguese, they have a service. It's called Minchat Todah, that was published by Rav De Sola Pool, because they have a lot of history in the United States of America. Actually, the first Jews came in 1654 to New York, and they were Spanish and Portuguese. And therefore, because of that, out of recognition to this amazing country, they put a service together. They put a service together that is, there's no tachanun, apparently. They're not doing tachanun, that's for sure. But besides that, there's something else. Right. You've been, my Baal Batim were pushing as well. Didn't work yet. Every day, right. Actually, I have a colleague in Los Angeles, interestingly, and he is into not saying tachanun. Whenever there's a birthday in his shul, he doesn't say tachanun. Anyway, so, but I could have spoken about that, but Mitzvah Hashem, if you invite me, and again, Thanksgiving next year, I'll definitely, I could share with you some thoughts about Thanksgiving and share with you the interesting service that they have. But for today, what I'd like to do is I would like to speak about Chanukah that is coming up, but from a different perspective. For some of you, when I spoke here before, I always say that I've been in the rabbinate now. It's been 26 years in two Sephardic congregations, one in Canada for 17 years, and it's been almost 10 years that I've been here in Fort Lee. And as I started my rabbinate, I understood. They hired me. Okay, I was in Vancouver, British Columbia, a beautiful place to raise my kids, and I was the synagogue was the only Sephardic synagogue west of Toronto. So it's around 5 hours flight between Toronto and Vancouver. And I understood that I had a mission. And my mission is, if they hired me as Sephardic rabbi, I have to understand what Sephardim are all about. Okay? Now, you have to understand that I learned in Ashkenazi yeshiva. I went through the normal system, but I understood that, I have a mission here. And then I started to explore my traditions, my Judaism, my ancestry. And I found out many, many things that I didn't know before. Among the things that I found out is that we have many, many rabbis, and many of them are not known. Not known because, there were some of them chief rabbis in very, very important positions, but for one way or another, after they passed away, not too many spoke of them. So what I would like to do today is to speak about one of them. I don't know if anyone heard of him. His name was Rav Yosef Messas. And for a little bit more of understanding who he was, you could look at the back of your source sheet at the last page, and it gives you a little bit about who he was, okay? He was born in 1892 in the city of Meknes, it's in Morocco. And Meknes, Morocco was considered to be the Jerusalem, the Yerushalayim of Morocco. All the big chachamim, all the big rabbis, the yeshiva and everything else was in Meknes. In 1923, he became the chief rabbi of Tlemcen, Algeria, for 17 years. Now, he gets there when he is, I believe, 32 years old, and he finds out that the Algerian Jews are completely disconnected from their Judaism. And why? Because they were under the French governance, and therefore, when the French came to Algeria, they brought all of the French culture. So he gets there, and he sees that most of the Jews are not even Shomer Shabbat. Okay, so he has to deal with it. He's pretty young. He's 32. He doesn't have any WhatsApp or anything else to deal with the questions that he has. He has to deal with them himself, and he becomes a very out-of-the-box thinker, posek, courageous courageous halachic ruler. One of the, I would say, the most courageous psak that he gave was that when he came to Algeria, the kosher butchers open on Shabbat. And he has to deal with it. And he goes through a lengthy tshuva. What does he do? In Algeria, since it was under the French rule, there was what they call the consistoire. If you go to France, there's a consistoire. The consistoire is basically the umbrella of the Jewish community. And there's a president. So he goes to the president of the consistoire in Algeria. He tells him, listen, we have to deal with it. The president tells him, don't turn to me, I can't help you. He finds himself alone. And basically, what does he do? A beautiful thing. He shows who he was. They say that rather than the people coming to the rabbi has to go down to the people, right? It says, Vayered Moshe Elaham. By Moshe Rabbeinu, it says that he went, right? Moshe Rabbeinu went down to his people. So he goes to every butcher And he sits down with them and he tells them, you have to close on Shabbat. And apparently they agree with him. There was one particular one, he says, he was a pretty, very opinionated. So what did he do? Smart man. He goes with the best friend of this butcher. He goes together, he says, I need you with me. And he sits down with them and he hugs them and he tells them, Shabbat, you cannot. And he swears to him that he's not going to open on Shabbat. The first Shabbat, no butcher opens. The second Shabbat, that butcher opens again. So he has to deal with it. Finally, it's a very lengthy tshuva, but finally he has no other choice but to figure out how they will be able to open on Shabbat and for the meat to be considered to be kosher. No rabbi today will have to deal with it, thank God for that. But it just shows you how out of the box he was. And all this was done in order to preserve the Jewish people of Algeria. Rather than to tell them, you know what, you're not part of my community and I'm going to, you're out of the Jewish camp, he tries in very creative ways to try to bring them in. I'll share with you one more story about him. Apparently one Shabbat he came out of the shul in Algeria, and lo and behold, there's a Jew out there who's smoking. So what did he do? Rather than to avoid him, he goes over to him. And the Jew sees, the chief rabbi coming. What does he do? He puts the cigarette. I'm not going to have smoke again next to the rabbi. And Rav Messas goes over to him. He hugs him. He says, Shabbat Shalom. I just came out of shul. And it's our tradition to give a bracha to the entire congregation. I said the bracha, but I missed you. I missed you. And apparently those words penetrated this Jew and he started to come shul. This was his way. So, as I said, he was a very creative thinker. And he was asked a question regarding the Chanukiah, the Menorah. One question that he was asked, and that led him to another question. Are you allowed to light an electric menorah on Chanukah? I'm not going to deal with it today. He gives his answer. He says, absolutely yes, no problem. It's 100% okay. He gives his reasons why. We're not talking about, he didn't have LED lights at that time. But basically, he has his whole way of building up his case of why it's permitted. But then that leads him to another question. Bezrat Hashem, hopefully soon, we're going to have the third Beth Hamikdash temple that is going to be built. Which menorah is going to be lit in the third Beth Hamikdash? And he deals with the question, and he says, according to his opinion, it's going to be an electric menorah. Mm-hmm. Why? We'll try to explore it together. Okay? So, first of all, he has two different responses about that. By the way, before I start, when he did his aliyah, I forgot to mention, to Eretz Israel, to Israel, he met Ben Gurion. That's him. That's his Rav Messas and Ben Gurion. And Ben Gurion encouraged them to stay in Israel. And Ben Gurion spoke with the mayor of Haifa, Abba Hushi, at that time. Apparently, Abba Hushi was anti-religious, but when he met Rav Messas, he was mesmerized by him, and he told him, you're going to be appointed. He appointed him as the chief rabbi of Haifa, and he was chief rabbi of Haifa till he passed away in 1974. Here's another, it's not so clear, but another picture of Rav Messas with Golda Meir. Okay? He met Golda Meir, and as I said, he dealt with this question about the menorah. So, here's what he says. There's one book that he wrote, which is Ner Mitzvah. Ner Mitzvah is all about the laws of Chanukah. And I'll quote what he says. Ve'od ani omer, pashut barur, he says, it's clear to me, she'im haya or ha'elektricité matzui bizman ha'mikdash, if electricity would have been found in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, the first and the second, Vadai shebo hayu madlikin menorah. He says, absolutely, I'm convinced that they would have lit the menorah with electricity. משום דאי אפשר להיות שנמצא בתינו החולין באורים גדולים של אור החשמל היקר הזה. He says, why? What's his logic? He says, in our homes we use electricity, okay? שהוא מעין דוגמה של מעלה. And he says, it's something that דוגמה של מעלה. They say, we find something that is similar to that actually in Yecheskel, the prophet speaks about chashmal, about electricity. And he says, if Yecheskel spoke about it, Good enough for him. He says it doesn't make sense for us to use electricity while in the Bet HaMikdash they would use olive oil. He says even the poor people at that time, at least, he says olive oil was something that was pretty cheap, insignificant. He says it's obvious for me, I am convinced that this is what we're going to be using in the third Bet HaMikdash. ואם משום שעל הדלקה בשם הזית היה ניכר שהשכינה שורה בישראל, שנותן בה שם את חברותיה, he goes on and he explains his reasoning. Anyways, another place in Otzar HaMichtavim. Otzar HaMichtavim is basically, he has 3 volumes. I have one of them here. Otzar HaMichtavim is basically letters that Rav Messas gets from all over the world, questions, different things. And you see how down to earth he is, by the way. He gives us even his way of making charoset for Pesach. This chief rabbi is sharing what he does, how he did wine, okay? But he had also halachic questions, some of them, by the way, from New York. He had actually, in New York, there is a Sephardic synagogue. The rabbi there was Rabbi Morsianu. Rabbi Morsianu was ordained by Rav Messas, and very, very often he asked Rav Messas, who was in Morocco at that time, questions, halachic questions about his synagogue in New York. Other people also asked him questions from all over the world, from Europe, from England, and he gives his opinion. So anyways, so here it is, and we could use our source sheet, okay? And the question is, can the menorah in the future, third temple, be lit with electricity? Does this constitute a forbidden change, or does the Torah indicate the future temple could differ from the past? Okay? So Rav Messas says the following. In Otzar HaMichtavim, in his book, he says, and I'll quote, Yesh re'ayot me'anivi'im. There's actually proofs from the prophets שחלקי המקדש השתנו לעתיד לבוא. That some of the measurements of the Bet HaMikdash, the third one, will be different. המזבח והשולחן אינם כמידות משה ובניין הבית כולו שונה מבית שלמה. The fact is, the measurements will not be like the measurements of Moshe Rabbeinu in the time of the Mishkan. And the Bet HaMikdash will be different than the one of Shlomo HaMelech, who built the Bet HaMikdash. לכן, therefore, he says, אין סתירה הלכתית לכך שהמנורה תודלק בשמן. There's no contradiction. It's very possible that in the third Bet HaMikdash, the menorah will be lit with electricity. So here's an interesting question. Is the technology change considered a religious change? Because, by the way, from this we could speak about many, many things that are happening in technology. How will we deal with it? How would Rav Messas deal with it if he would be here today? It's something that you have to think about, okay? Soon, maybe it exists already, but we have an electric car, okay? Think about it for a second, among many, many other questions. Someone will come to the rabbi and will tell him, am I allowed to basically come with this car? I'll program it before Shabbat. It's going to open the doors for me. I'm going to go in, and it's going to bring me to the shul. Is that okay or not okay? Rabbis are dealing with it today, by the way. And there's, as you know, one rabbi, 2 opinions, right? There's many, many different opinions out there. But how would Rav Messas deal with it? What would he say about that? So here is an interesting thing. It says, in Yechezkel it says, in his time, he has this vision, and it says, המזבח עץ 3 גבוה ואורכו 2 אמות ומקצועותיו לו ואורכו וקירותיו עץ. So he says that the mizbeach, and I put it in bold, the mizbeach, the altar, had 3 amot. The height was 3 amot. Contrary to the original mizbeach, according to one opinion, it was 10 amot. So we see that there's a difference already between the mizbeach of Yechezkel and the original mizbeach. Therefore, Rav Messas says, if so, his logic is very simple. If it happened already, if the measurements will not be the same, who tells you that we can't have a menorah that will be done out of, or will be an electric menorah? Okay? And the Malbim actually says, הכלים והמזבח ביחזקאל אינם זהים לכלים שעשה משה. The utensils that Yechezkel is talking about are not exactly the same as the ones of Moshe. הם מתארים את המקדש העתידי בבניין האחר. It's talking about the future Bet HaMikdash. And therefore, accordingly, it's very possible that the menorah will be an electric one. And the Radak and the Mitzudot also say, they tell us, they share with us that Yechezkel depicts a temple different from the first and second temples, not a literal reconstruction. So therefore, we have to, he deals with Rav Messas and he says 100% okay. But again, we have to think to ourselves and we have to be extremely creative when it comes to technology, when it comes to what's going to be the future of Am Yisrael. And by the way, it's very, very easy to say, no, it's prohibited. And some, when it came to the electric car, they prohibited it. I know at least of one tshuva of a rabbi who is very out of the box. And basically, in his tshuva, Rav Chaim Ovadia, he says that according to his opinion, electric cars on Shabbat will be okay. It's no automatic. Okay, but it's not the same. It's exactly the same as a Shabbat elevator. Okay. So, anyways, here's another question. Does Yechezkel's prophecy indicate literal change or symbolic meaning? What do you think? Is it literally or it's maybe symbolic? Maybe nothing will change. You know, there's the concept out there that the Khatam Sofer brings, which is Chadash Asur Min HaTorah. He is all about not changing anything. Whatever is written has to stay the same. But is that the only opinion? Are there other opinions out there? And I'm picking your brains here. I'm asking you, what do you think?
I feel like you could distinguish between the size of a utensil and something like the material you use for lighting the menorah.
Okay. So you're saying that there's a difference between that. Okay.
The Mishkan and the Mikdash are not the same size.
Right.
I also feel like Hashem will tell Mashiach what to do.
Okay, so we'll Rabbi, you're a smart man. You leave it up to Mashiach. I'm not going to deal with it. Okay, fine. Yes, sure.
Does he feel that it will be electric? Does he feel electric is more muhudar than shemen?
Very good question. The answer is yes.
The question is then, does he say now people should be lighting with electric?
Absolutely. That's his opinion. That's his opinion. Absolutely. By the way, he says why. You're talking, in his time, they didn't have the LED lights. But we had, the old, and he says the following. He's pretty creative. He says, basically, if you look at the old light bulbs, there is a ptil, there is a wick. You know what's the wick? There you got it. Exactly. So therefore, he says, actually, again, he says that electricity is even better. I mean, the light is better than olive oil, and accordingly, his opinion is absolute. Now, by the way, I would have loved to be in Hanukkah in his house to see what he did. He passed away in 1974. I was 4 years old, so I don't know, but it would be nice to know. Basically, if I would ever do a PhD, I would love to do it on Rav Messas because he's out of the box type of thinker, and I like to read what he has to say. Anyways, and yes, please.
Does he deal with the minotar kankanim, nasenes lashoshanim?
Okay, so
work with electricity. In other words, 8 days. Where it ran out of electricity?
Ran out of oil. That's what you're saying.
Ran out of oil. I can understand.
Right.
The electricity ran out, and
Yeah. It's not.
He doesn't say that
I get it.
electricity. The nace was what happened then.
I guess he's asking, shouldn't we use a material that corresponds to the miracle recommended?
Correct. So he deals with it and he says, true, because this was the best light that they had at that time. However, if they would have electricity, they would use the... Exactly. That's the way he deals with it.
Well, they wouldn't have used the Pach Shemen.
Exactly.
They just kept going.
Exactly. Okay. Okay. Anyways, so let's continue on. So it says in Shemot, it says, it says, in the Pasuk, it says, it's pure gold menorah, and it's talking about olive oil. Okay? So here's a question. Is olive oil essential to the mitzvah? Only irrelevant to the historical context? Okay, dealing with that. So Rav Messas, his view is, it has to do with the fact that this is what they had at that time. If they would have something better, i.e. electricity, they would use electricity. This is his point. And by the way, we see his creativity, because from this, I am sure that if he would live today, he would probably be very open to all of the technology, and he would deal with it in a very creative way. I know as well that if he would live today, probably he would have been looked down upon because of his openness. Okay, there are some rabbis who criticize criticize them for being so lenient, for being so open, but he did it because he felt, first of all, that was who he was, but as well, he finds himself in the rabbinate in a time that is pretty challenging. And as I said, rather than to close up and say, you know what, either you follow my rules or the original rules, or if not, forget it, he is more open. He is trying to make Judaism as relevant as he can. Now, the Rambam, by the way, also deals with an interesting point, and he says the Rambam emphasizes, you could look at it, Hanichot Midim Umusafin, Perek Gimel, Halacha Yud Aleph, in the Yad HaChazaka. He says, he emphasizes the menorah as a perpetual light and specifies the use of pure olive oil. Now, what would the Rambam say, by the way, as well? If you would live today, would he say you have to use whatever they use in the Beth Hamikdash, or would it be Rav Messas? We have electricity. You should use electricity, okay? So here is another question. Is this permanent halachic requirement or specific to the temple of his time? The same idea, the same question that we have to ask ourselves. And Rashi as well, number 5 says, Katit lamor velo katit lamnachot. Rashi in Vayikra emphasizes that the oil is for illumination, not meal offerings. What would Rashi say as well? Is it olive oil, or is it something else that we could use? And this is the question, does this imply only olive oil may be used, or could another source of light suffice? So it's a question, and I'm not going to give you the answer because Rav Messas gives us his view. There are different views out there. But here are the key points from Rav Messas. First of all, future temple vessels may differ. Okay, Rabbi Bergman has an interesting point. Maybe it's only the materials are the same, but the size is different. Interesting. The Mizbeach, the table and temple structure differ from previous temples. Some authorities like Levin Nagaon, the Malmim Derada confirm that there's going to be a different temple. So if it's going to be a different temple, how much could you extend it? Is it only the size? The materials will be the same, or even the materials will be different. Do we have the answer? No, I personally don't have the answer, but I'm just sharing with you what Rav Messas is saying. Now, here's another interesting question. If vessels change, the methods of performing the mitzvah can also change. Okay? Principle, change in vessels, possible change in performance. Not a question to be asked. I'm going to leave you with a lot of questions to ponder upon. And hopefully you will, after this shiur, this class, this discussion, you'll be able to go and discuss it, okay? Now, here's another question. The mitzvah is light before God. Not necessarily olive oil. It says light, okay? So if it's light, what type of light? Is it only oil? And don't forget that. By the way, Rav Messas has another interesting point that he makes regarding the electric menorah. He says the olive oil, eventually the Ramah does say in Ilchot Chanukah that in his time they started to use wax. So what's the difference between wax and electricity? If you're already changing the original method of lighting the menorah,
it might not be fire.
So that's a whole question.
If it's incandescent.
Let's say it is. Let's say it is.
Okay, so it is.
Let's say it is. Okay. So, listen, if you would go to most rabbis today, they'll tell you use, obviously, best thing is the olive oil. They'll tell you wax. But you could use Rav Messas in certain cases. For example, let's say someone finds himself, God forbid, in the hospital or in a hotel during Chanukah.
They use electric candles in hospitals. They make sure they have incandescent ones.
Very good. But could you say a bracha on it or not? That's the $1 million question. Rav Messas will tell you 100% yes. Other rabbis, like among them Rav Ovadia Yosef, Rav Ovadia has an interesting tshuva in Yechavedat, where he disagrees with Rav Messas. He says, absolutely not. You could use oil, you could use wax, but you cannot use electric, even if it's incandescent. But according to Rav Messas, you could use it. If someone would like to use, and you should ask your rabbi, but if someone finds himself in a situation where the only way that he could light it is with electricity, Rav Messas will tell you 100% okay, go and light and say the bracha asher kideshanu mitzvah v'tzivanu la'adlik ner shel Chanukah. 100% okay. Okay. So now Rav Messas, by the way, in one place, definitely he says, Vadai. And what I read to you from his book Ner Mitzvah, he says, Vadai, absolutely, he's convinced that it's going to be the third Beit HaMikdash will be with electric menorah. In Otzar HaMichtav, a certain rabbi asked him, he told him, how come? So it seems like he changed his opinion a little bit. He said, there's a big possibility, not 100% sure. Okay? But in one place it says, absolutely. The other, in Otzar HaMichtavim, is a little bit more vague about that. Okay? As I said, and you can look at number 7, some authorities argue, and they say the mitzvah requires olive oil as specified in the Torah, and mitzvot do not change. The Khatam Sofer will be very happy with that because he says, Chadash Asur Min HaTorah. Anything that is new, that didn't exist in the time of the Torah, can't use it. Okay? But here is a discussion. If the temple changes, does that permit changes in mitzvot as well? If anything will change in the third Beit HaMikdash, how would mitzvot look at that time? Will it be exactly the same thing? Or will we be more open since the measurements will be different, so maybe certain mitzvot will be different as well? And by the way, we don't have to wait for the Beit HaMikdash. Even today, we have questions that we deal with. I was just dealing with a question. We're learning Halichot Shabbat every morning. I give one halacha at the end of Tefillah. And someone asked me yesterday, with the advancements of AI, and you have now Alexa and Siri, are you allowed to use them on Shabbat to say, Siri, turn on the lights? So rabbis have to deal with this question today as well. But as technology is advancing, we as rabbis cannot just be passive and say, I'm not going to deal with it. You have to do it. You have your balabatim who are paying your salary, and you have to deal with right, absolutely. Okay? And you have to deal with even without the salary, but the fact is, rabbis have to figure out things according to as technology is advancing.
How do you handle things if municipal regulations, or if you're in a hospital and you can't use fire?
Right.
Let's deal with that. How do you?
So as we said, Rav Messas will tell you 100% you could light the menorah, electric menorah in the case of the hospital, or let's say a hotel, and you're allowed to say the bracha according to his opinion. Many opinions will disagree. They'll tell you, use that, but don't say a bracha.
I think there are definitely opinions that distinguish between lighting for Shabbos candles, lighting Hanukkah candles.
Absolutely.
Where I think pretty much most would say, it's a machlokas. Most would say you can make a bracha on Shabbos candles. For Hanukkah, it might have to be similar to the way it was done in the Mikdash when the miracle happened.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not, even if it's fire, it might not be the sort of fire that you require for the mitzvah of Hanukkah, because
Right.
we're trying to commemorate the menorah and the Mikdash.
And you're saying the olive oil that was part of that as well? Right. Anyways, so let's continue on. We'll finish with that. So conclusion. The third Beit HaMikdash may not be an exact replica of the earlier temples. We saw that. Some Nevi'im, Yechezkel, definitely indicate future changes in structure and vessels. And an electric menorah is a legitimate possibility. It's not something that is heretical. You shouldn't look at it as something that is heretical. And as we see, holiness accommodates innovation. Rebuilding the temple may include new ways of performing mitzvot as long as it does not contradict the Torah. And Rav Messas, among others, was someone who was very open to that. In his time, there were certain new things that came to be, and he had to deal with it. I'll share with you a couple of interesting stories about him, about his personality as well in a minute. But here is the discussion question. Is technological innovation a halachic change? Electric car on Shabbat, for example. Does Yechezkel's prophecy describe literal or symbolic changes? How do we differentiate between changes permitted by prophecy, changes forbidden by Torah principles? Can we derive new forms of mitzvot from Yechezkel? Does technological advancements bring us closer to temple service, or distances us? So a lot of questions that we could ask and discuss based on Rav Messas's tshuva. So If you have any comments, questions, please, by all means, I'm open to it. And if not, I'll share with you a couple. So, yeah, please.
He passed away in 1974. He didn't have electric cars. And now you say that it's a possibility that if you have program the electric car, it can bring you to shore or something.
According to some opinions,
What's the difference between that and ordering a car service to come and take you to shore?
well, there's a big difference between them because a car service is someone, unless it's today, I think, where is it? In Los Angeles? Arizona, there. Okay, Arizona, you have actually, right, without a driver, right?
California.
So then, if it's no driver, so then, according to some opinions, you could, let's say, Uber before Shabbat or Lyft before Shabbat, program it, and then the car that has no driver, I'm not sure if I'll be safe, if it's so safe, and I will drive, I will go in it, but it's safe, okay. Anyways, but the fact is, according to some opinions, it's going to be 100% okay. Not everyone will agree with what I'm saying, but some opinions will permit it.
It doesn't open the door for you, so when you open the
Right.
door...
They'll fix that.
They'll fix it.
Anyways, Rabbi
I think
Bergman.
the question is going to ultimately be when
the Jew.
when a robot does something, who's doing it? I think that's going to be one of the
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
We're not
With
used
AI,
to
you
things
don't
happening
have
by
to
themselves.
With AI, you won't have to program it. If it's living with you, it'll learn from what you do.
Yes.
It'll do it by itself.
Yes.
I guess like the
So
more
it's like-
AI becomes
it's like
automated, the
insurance.
more you wonder like what's the difference between this thing we're calling a robot and a person halachically for the purpose of defining who's doing the malacha.
Right.
Shabbos.
Right.
What's the difference of asking a non-Jewish person, which we know is rabbinically prohibited, to do something for you, and asking a robot to do it? I'm not saying that in a philosophical. I'm
You
saying
don't
that
have
in
to
a
ask.
practical sense.
It'll know what.
Okay, but I'm saying that's going to be the question.
But by the way, I saw a difference between if it knows to asking, okay? Because I dealt with this question this morning, and since you brought it up, regarding to ask AI, there is an interesting machloket in Masechet Bava Metzia, I believe it's Daf Tzadik Amud Bet, between Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish. Another interesting question that you could bring back to our discussion regarding AI. It says, Lo tachsom shor bedisho, you're not allowed to muzzle the ox, because it's not going to eat, and you are going to be causing the animal to suffer. B'tzar ba'alei chaim. Rabbi Yochanan says, the question that the Gemara asked there is, if you scream to the animal not to eat and it's going to follow your instructions, are you allowed to do that, or is that considered to be muzzling? Rabbi Yochanan says there's a problem with it. Resh Lakish disagrees and says there's no problem. The halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore it seems like when you speak, it's like you are acting. It's like you're muzzling the animal. Accordingly, on Shabbat, if you will speak to AI and whatever, Alexa, Siri, it's like you are doing it. However, if it's indirect, which means that AI studies knows exactly your routine, it seems like there won't be any issues with it. It's like a timer. It's like a timer.
This command work for Mashiach also.
Seems like it's
So if it does, then it should be the same thing.
Same thing. Okay. Right. Anyways, yeah, you had a question.
No, just going to say, is there any concern of AI going too far, of AI programming rabbinic commentary?
Listen, someone told me that according to one study, in the next 10 years, it's pretty frightening. Apparently, in a surgery room, there will be only one doctor, and the rest will be robots, AI robots there. So, let's see what's going to happen.
If the robots allow us to do surgery,
And by the way, I was just listening to the news last night, and it said that already 17% of population is already suffering because of AI. They're losing their jobs. Okay, 17%. So,
Computers took away a lot of jobs.
so.
Steam engine took away a lot of jobs.
So listen, and things will not get any better. Where will it stop? When my wife was very wise. When I told her that, says, Mashiach is going to come before. Don't worry about it. Okay. Okay. But anyways, this is what I wanted to share with you. I would like just to finish off on with a little story about Rav Messas. So as I said, he became the chief rabbi of Haifa at the end of his life. He gets there, and there's an Ashkenazi chief rabbi. Rav Kaniel was the Ashkenazi chief rabbi. He was there for many, many years. As they call it in Yiddish, Alte Yid, and an old Jew from Eastern Europe. So as Rav Messas comes, there was at that time, I think it still exists, an olive company called, very creative name, called Shemen. Okay? It's called shemen. And anyways, the shemen company contacted Rav Messas. They had their company in Haifa, and they contacted him before Pesach. For what? They said, we have kitniyot. You're the Sephardi chief rabbi. We want you to come and to give the hechsher for Sephardim for the oil company. He goes, he looks around, he checks it, says 100% okay, gives the hechsher. Rav Kaniel, who finds out about that, is furious. And he goes over to him and says, you're a newcomer who came from Morocco and you're taking over. Who gave you the right to give hechsher on kitniyot? I've been here for so many years. And he gives him blast. Rav Messas, rather than to scream back at him, what does he do? Beautiful. You see his personality. He looks at him, he smiles at him, and he says to him the following. In Hebrew, I'm going to say it. What did the kitniyot do to you that you're screaming at them? Rather than tell me, he's screaming at me, you know who I am? I am the chief rabbi of Haifa. So he completely broke the ice, and apparently they became best friends, worked together. Rav Kaniel passed away before Rav Messas, and apparently the eulogy that Rav Messas, you could find it, it's archived, I saw it somewhere, apparently he was crying, and he gave a beautiful eulogy on Rav Kaniel. But this is who he was, a very down-to-earth type of rabbi who was able to be creative and to think out of the box. And I'll share with you one beautiful story that I read about him. As chief rabbi of Haifa, it's a pretty good position. You get a chauffeur and a car, driver and a car. Rav Messas every day used to walk, even though he was old, used to walk from his apartment to the Rabbanut Harashit of Haifa. And when they asked him why, he says, I'm the chief rabbi of Haifa. I'm going to take a car. I want to walk in the street and say good morning to the people of the city. This is the beauty of who he was. And I share with you one tshuva among many that he has, very creative tshuva. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I wish you all happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.